sir. Hello. Hello. Take the mask off. Monica, we're ready to go? Okay. Okay, we're ready to start. Anybody who wishes to sit down, this is the time to sit down. I'm going to speak about my brother Naren, who I love dearly. And I'm going to speak of his life at times that you guys are not familiar with. So hopefully it'll add some new thinking on how he became what he became. Naren was born in a very small town called Panipat, which is about 50 miles from Delhi. Our dad, his name is Amar Singh Gupta, and my mother Dhanvanti Gupta. My dad had done high school and my mother had done 8th grade. My dad was retired as an upper divisional clerk. They used to live in a one room apartment in Sabzi Mandi, and then eventually they retired in one bedroom apartment in Lodi Colony. In our house, when they retired, we had 7 bulbs and 2 fans, and our monthly bill used to be 30 cents a month. That's how much electricity we consumed. So this year, our parents turned 100 years old, and I asked Naren, how would he characterize his life growing up in this environment? And this is how he described it. He says, I was born in privilege. Our parents had the view that things that matter the most require zero talent, education, or resources. Instead, what mattered is that they require keeping your commitments and showing up on time, taking the extra step when everyone else is tired and has given up, and being curious and being always available to assist others. So that's how he described, and that's the person he eventually became. And so let me just describe what it was like when he was very small. First thing is he started walking when he was about 9 months old. Always very curious. He was always trying to fidget and figure things out. At 9 months, he was walking holding the bed. By the 10th month, he was walking on his own. A very interesting thing happened when he turned 7. My father had from Delhi wanted to go to Panipat, so he took him to the bus station and he put him in the bus, and my father was with him. Then he wanted to get off the bus to get some fruits. While my father got off the bus left, and Naren never left the bus, and he ended up as a 7-year-old in alone by himself. But he had no trouble. He was able to make it to our town Panipat at the age of 7 years old. He just was, self-confident, self-assured, uh, and he could drive my dad crazy. One of the things he used to do, he was a big brat when he was young. One of the things he used to do was that in the middle of the night he would start crying and say, I want milk. And we had no refrigerator and so on, and there was no shops that were open. So he would then say, well, you got to take me to the cows. And my dad would wake up 2 a.m. He would take him to the cows and show that the cows are asleep. And that's the only way he would agree to eat something else and not be and do without the milk, and would be willing to wait till the morning. He was One thing about him was that he was short when he was younger, but he was always trying to compete with people that were much taller and much older than him. So we used to play chess together and cricket together, and he would initially always lose. But the thing about him was that he was so bent on improving himself that gradually he became an expert chess player and a good cricket player, that eventually he would just come through. And that's the part that formed him as he became bigger and bigger. One of the things he would always say is that in order to advance ahead in life, you cannot have fear of failure. Many of you have heard his story. When he was 15 years old in 1964, he competed for the joint IIT entrance examination. Many of you know what that means. There were 300,000 people taking the exam, and 1,500 would be selected to join the IIT and rank ordered. And my father did not know how to see Naren, so he started seeing where Naren was in the rank, going up from 1,500, 1,400, sweating that he could not find Naren's name. And eventually he found the Naren's name as number 1 in all India IIT joint entrance exam. The thing that did harm for me was 5 years later, when I was going through the same exam, my father was starting from 1 and said, what, you haven't even come 10, what kind of a fool are you? So that's how Naren was. My one of the things was that 40 years ago, my mother passed away, and she was here in Stanford Hospital. She passed away from heart attack. And the thing few hours before she passed away, she put Naren's hand over mine, and she said, I'm going to go away, and I want to make sure that you're taking care of Vinita. I want to make sure you're taking care of your brothers and everybody else. And she made him promise that he would take care of us. And that thing remained in his head, everything that he did after that. And I'm sort of speaking on behalf of my mother now that he is no more with us. And he says, you, Naren, and she used to call him Bhai. She didn't call him son. She used to call him Naren Bhai, and he used to call her sister, Bobo Ji. So he said, Naren Bhai, you bring tears of joy. You were there for your older brother when he was very seriously ill and eventually passed away. You've been there for Ash. You've been there for Vanita. You were there for your mother in law. You were there for everybody in the house. But remember that your job is not over. Your job continues. And they still need you, and we still need him, even as he's physically no more with us. Many of you know that 2 months ago, we had gone to Canada to the polar bear safari. It was just two of us that had gone, and we were there for about 9 days. One thing he would want to do, polar bears are very dangerous, and we were in an enclosed camp with high voltage wires. That he would every day he would want to go past those wires to watch the polar bears, and he had these big cameras out there, and it's in the rain. It's very dangerous. What are we doing here? So he'd say, okay, we'll take some precaution, but he says, one thing I don't want to do in my life is just work out of fear. I just don't want to work out of fear. Nothing is going to happen. And this is all overstated. And as a result of it, we just ended up seeing a lot of polar bears because he was just so aggressive about just going through this. We used to have the whole day with nothing to do at the polar bear safari. So he would talk to others about how his family was. And he would brag nonstop about how he cajoled Vanita into marrying him and how he sort of won her over when, he met her in India and then eventually won her over. He would brag nonstop about Annika and Sean and Serena, just nonstop bragging. Annika, almost embarrassingly, he was bragging, and just you could see pride in his DNA at this. And each of those people are still writing to us. We were only 6 of us there. He was a gadget freak, those of you who know. So before you would go to any vacations, he would be buying cameras and he would be buying lenses, and they would be more complicated than the prior ones. And he would sort of work hard and trying to figure it out. Ashok, if you're here, 10 years ago, we had gone to Bhutan, and they needed this new camera, Canon 5D Mark II, and they weren't available anywhere in the world. Eventually, they were in Mumbai, and they said there are 2 cameras in India, the Canon 5D Mark II. And next thing you know, both the cameras were bought by Ashok and Naren. And if you see the pictures from Bhutan, just beautiful pictures came through this. 3 years ago, we had gone to Madagascar. And, when you go to these trips, they were all, you go during the day. But for us, because he was so enthusiastic, they wanted to come with us in the night tour. So they took us in the middle of the night. They asked Naren if he wanted to go. He said, I really want to go in the middle of the night to a forest. And so it was all muddy and dirty in the forest. And then here he had a small flashlight. He would be watching a small frog, a green frog sitting on the tree. And the next thing, the sky looked like it was 10 feet away. It was so dark and the sky looked so bright. And then he would sort of look at every lemur and he would know who the lemur was. And he would, just curiosity and just the zest for wanting to do more and more existed in him. Deep inside, he was a very humble guy. He wanted to work hard and he wanted to excel. And he was trying to become a better bridge player. And I said to him, Naren, you have such analytical skills. How is it possible that people like Debbie Rosenberg or Zia Mahmood or David Gold are better than you, or Daniel Corbell? These are, world's best bridge players. How is it possible that they are better than you? And he would say, and are they better than you? And he would say, yes, they are, unabashedly. And he would say, I look at one hand, which is my hand, and these guys look at all 4 hands simultaneously. Their memory, their vision is so good. But then he would say something else. He would say that Even though they're great, I am working very hard, and someday I'll rise to their level. And that's the person he became. That failure just did not bother him, it just caused more motivation for him to excel. In my personal life, one of my biggest regrets is what happened with him and I on October the 23rd. That he and I, we were flying from Winnipeg to Churchill, and I said to him in that flight that, Naren, you're not taking proper care of yourself. You're getting emotional on silly things. Sometimes you're getting emotional with Vinita because she took a car route that ended up 10 seconds later to the house. And sometimes you're getting emotional about some bridge hand with somebody you were playing. You're not taking care of yourself, and you will go away this time without warning. And I'm not prepared for you to go away. And we spoke about that for 2 hours from Winnipeg to Churchill. This was a whole discussion. And he said, no, 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 I'm not getting emotional. I said, you are getting emotional. And we sort of tried to solve a lot of problems in that 2 hour period about working through him. And my regret is I wish I had worked more. Maybe I did not fully understand what I was saying, but I wish I'd worked more. And maybe he was around as a result of this exercise. The thing that I love about Narendra is he had just simply too much to give as a person. He was free to give. You ask him a question, he'll answer it. You'll ask for this, the answer was always yes in his life. Our children are his biggest fans. You see Aman standing here with a little baby, Ankush, uh, Prerna, Marishal. Our children are his biggest fans. Our dog Bodhi just loved him. Bodhi sees him, Bodhi jumps all over him. He just runs away from me and runs away to Naren. Our grandson Ishan wants to still play basketball with him every day. And Alina wants to sit on his shoulders. Yesterday she was asking, where is Naren Dadu? She doesn't know what is going on. Uh, he was just totally in Florida in love with the newborn, the 3 months old Mila that we have right there in this. He just knew, he would say that love is not about how smart or good looking you are. Love is the capacity to appreciate and love others. Uh, he was, Vinita's mother used to live here. He was always thinking through her. On Wednesday, he was thinking how to help Vinita's sister after her husband had passed away. He was always thinking through how to be helpful to uh, our people in India. And Monica, I to tell you, he called me. He was so proud. He was so proud, saying that Monica is going to be a mother. That I don't know, some of you know or not know that Anika is going to be a mother, Anika is going to have a son, and the pride in his life about when he heard that was the most of anything that I can see. I started off this discussion about how Naren said to me how he grew up in privilege. With Naren as my rock, I feel that I grew up in the ultimate privilege because he was with me. We spoke every day of our lives, probably 2 or 3 times we spoke. Every time I asked him if he's tied up, his answer was the same: nope, I'm not doing anything, and I have all the time in the world. Uh, he was always very protective of me. He taught me how to play chess. He was pushing me, pulling me very hard in the last few months to play bridge. He encouraged me to come to USA. He paid for my education. When I first landed in US, there was a passbook from Chemical Bank lying in my cubbyhole with the money for my education. So he was just pushing and pushing and helping me live a privileged life. A week with him, I would spend tons and times with him. A week with him would have my head buzzing, unsure if I could take him anymore, but grateful that he was my brother. And even today, many people say that, Ash, you look like Naren. And I would say this is the biggest compliment you can give me, because if I could be half as good as Naren, I would be grateful to God that I lived a good life. He was my North Star. I know this is a celebration about Naren. I recognize that. And but the thing I want to leave a message here is for Onika, for you. for Serena, for Sean, for your mother. I recognize that two beautiful girls have lost the father. My Bobby has lost her husband. That even though Naren is not physically here, we are with you forever, forever and ever, because we absolutely love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashwini. That was fantastic from the heart. And, you know, I know your brother loved you a lot because every time I talked to him, he told me that. But then, after saying that, he would always add, but if I had another brother, it would be you. So, I know he loved me. And, it's my privilege to stand here today and to talk about what Naren meant to me and to celebrate the many, many ways in which I was enriched with his lifelong friendship. So Naren and I actually knew each other 60 years ago because we overlapped in IIT Delhi. Of course, he was, as you said, a brilliant guy, number one in the joint entrance exam. And, for people who don't understand what that means, there are like 500,000 kids who sit for that exam. And they're all, above average. And so, if Nareem's number one in that exam, that tells you that he's truly one in a million. In a world where we talk about the top 0.01%, this guy was truly one in a million. A brilliant mind. And so he graduated 1 year later from IIT with a gold medal. In 1969, he came to Caltech. I went to Berkeley in 68. And we sort of lost contact with each other. And then in 1980, I remember when he was at Sharon Heights, one of our common friends from Caltech was visiting Naren, and he said, hey, why don't we invite Ashok? You haven't met him in a while. So I went over there, and we had absolutely immediate chemistry. I mean, Naren took me immediately into his fold. We didn't have a business relationship, but he opened up everything, his businesses, his friends. In those days, I was a stranger to Silicon Valley. He introduced me to the culture and the people of Silicon Valley. We invested together early on when I got into venture capital. And he didn't just assume that he knew more about that than I did. We would talk about some companies, and lo and behold, he would go and invest in them. So it was very, very, it was a relationship that had a very strong bond to it. So when he launched Nexus, I was one of the first people to invest in it, and he was very proud of that fact. He'd tell everybody. He gave me a front row seat into the businesses in India, into the CEOs and the leaders that would lead them. And it was fascinating to see his vision unfold. The pioneering mission of bringing venture capital to India and building world-class companies. His legacy is now beginning to bear fruit, and I see lots of good things ahead. So Naren has been my closest friend. He has been like a brother. He has been a fellow adventurer. He loves to travel. I love to travel. He's been a joy, and for 40 years, our children have grown together. Families have shared most precious memories, the day-to-day memories, the birthdays, the graduations, but also we've been on many, many trips together. And if you were to make a list of the 100 most memorable things of my life, things that I've shared with Naren would occupy a very large part of it. We traveled, of course, all over the world, and Naren had this lust for adventure. He was full of joy and exploration and discovery and journey where no one had been. He wanted to go to 180 countries, even though there are only 140 of them. And our families had dozens of wonderful trips together to exotic places such as the Silk Road, which he completely designed that trip. We went to Samarkand and Bukhara. I remember taking this bus through Kyrgyzstan in over the Tian Shan Mountains into China. It has been wonderful. So just sitting back and thinking, what is it that makes Naren? What do I see in him that really was the most endearing thing? And of course, he was unbelievably intelligent, goes without saying. Although sometimes when I heard his politics, I wondered where all that where all that intelligence went. But we argued like cats and dogs. I remember one time, I don't know if Anika remembers, we were in Hawaii at a really fancy French restaurant, and the children were with us. They were young, and we started arguing about politics, and we closed the restaurant down, yelling at each other. Finally, this French waiter comes and very politely says, "Excuse me, sir, we don't want to interrupt your conversation, but we are closing down." So, we have some deep, very, very strong memories of things we did. Naren was not only intelligent, he was deeply curious, full of wonderment. He combined these traits with limitless energy and joy. And as a lot of people have noticed, his default answer to a lot of things, to anything that you proposed to him, was always yes. It was always, and it was great. I remember one of the zaniest yeses from him was one time when I was obsessed with the Indus Valley civilization, the Harappan civilization. We had actually invited Professor Mark Kenoyer to give a talk about it, who had dug up Harappa. And Naren and I would talk about it. And I said, "Hey, Naren, let's go to Dholavira." Dholavira being the city in Kutch, which was one of the major 5,000-year-old metropolises of this thing, of the Indus Valley civilization. And Naren, who was just setting up Nexus in those days, was running around trying to raise money and set up offices and recruit in India, said, "When do you want to go?" I said, "We're trying to set it up for February." He says, "Okay, I'm going to move my calendar around. We're going." And before we knew it, we had a most memorable trip. We flew from Bombay to Bhuj, and someday I'll tell you a story about how we tried to order beer in Bhuj. And Naren and I enjoyed a whole bunch of things. He was, great lover of photography. I remember 40 years ago when we started traveling. We were just starting out in photography. He was obsessed with equipment, as you said. And I was going to tell that Bhutan story because it was quite remarkable how we got the two cameras that all of India was allocated. In fact, the part that you didn't mention, Ashwini, was that the US had zero allocations. India actually got allocations from Canon for political reasons before they gave any cameras to India. So it ended up being great that we went to that wedding. Naren was always very appreciative of the kinds of talents, the fun that he perceived in me. We used to write limericks. You remember the 40th birthday, I remember, was the first time when we started doing these limerick roasts. And Naren would laugh with his head back and just laugh with complete abandon at all of the limericks. It was so much fun, except if I ever made a limerick which put down a political, somebody like Sarah Palin, then he wouldn't laugh. I remember one joke I told on his 40th birthday, which was something to do with capital gains tax, and he did not laugh. He was so serious about that. So we had a lot of fun. I introduced him to crossword puzzles, which was one of our passions, and Naren took it up with extreme passion. He was doing the New York Times crossword puzzle every day, and about a month ago, he was always cognizant of the fact that crossword puzzles were a tie between me and him, and we had such a warm relationship. A month ago, he sent me this article, which he also sent to Anika from the New Yorker, talking about the zen of crossword puzzles. I remember even in Patagonia, I was trying to do crossword puzzles every morning. So we were running around, even with our Spanish speaking guides who were saying, oh. Oh. So it was a lot of fun. The the trip to Patagonia was one of the most memorable things we did. And Naren set this up as it was a 17-day trip with a very strenuous agenda. The eight of us went, there was the Chandras and Naren and Vanita and Anika and Sarina and Geeta and me. And I tell you, in the beginning, this was, when he described the strenuous trip, it was outside my comfort zone. But little did I know, many years later, it was the best 17 days of my life. It was just amazing what we ended up doing. We did long hikes, we walked on glaciers, we chased dolphins, we chased penguins in boats, and we scampered up, water slides and so forth. Uh, and one very, very memorable moment that I recall is when we took off in the Straits of Magellan in this ship called the Mare Australis. Uh, we took off, and the coastline of Chile started receding. It was getting 11:30 at night. It was still light. The sky was still a little bit light. It was glinting on the water, and Naren said, "Hey, let's grab our cameras. This is beautiful. Let's go up to the top deck. We're going to take some pictures." So we grabbed our cameras. We went up, and there was no one there. It was cold. The wind was howling, and the water was glinting, and suddenly we see these birds, these big, uh, wandering albatrosses that came into our view. It was like very, very stark and very, very beautiful. And just, even though it was cold, Naren was just transfixed. He was so much in love with nature. He just stood there. He For the half an hour, he forget. He was an out of body experience almost. I mean, he was in a zone. He forgot where he was, and this was how he was all the time. I mean, when we had gone for a hike to another part, we were ready for a 16-mile hike. We got up early in the morning. Naren had already been up for 2.5 hours. He was out there taking pictures the early morning dawn of these mountains in Patagonia. And I ended up making a movie out of it, which Naren just loved. Showed it to everybody. In fact, one of the Nexus guys, I think it was Suvir, who told me, man, it was required watching every time we visited Naren. So, so we had a great time, watched the movies, and had a lot of fun. So I think the great thing about Naren was that he cared about his friends. As you've mentioned, he cared about me. He was worried. He saw my health was getting down a little bit. He was worried. And a couple of days before he left for Florida, he just called up and he just showed up with a bottle of wine. And he gave me a huge big hug. He said, "How are you doing? We really should be meeting more often." And then spontaneously, we went out to dinner that night. And Vinita revealed for the first time to me that Anika was going to have a baby. And boy, was it a joyous dinner. In between talking about My Fair Lady, a play that he had just seen, we kept on talking about this baby. As you have seen the look on Naren's eyes of pride. Unfortunately, it was the last time that we would see him, but it was such a lovely experience. So I would say that even though this is a celebration of Naren's life and all he meant for us, I have to say that today, we miss him. Our heart is broken. There's a big void. And, we wish we could get him back, but we can't. And so when I think about that and I start getting joyless and unhappy, I suddenly hear Naren, saying to me, "Hey, Ashok, in life, challenges and losses and suffering are inevitable, but unhappiness is optional. So get out of it." So with that, I would like to say I'm really grateful the fact that I've known him for 40 years and all that he's done for me. Thank you. Sarina?
When I think back about everything, there is such a sense of loss and dullness, wanting so much more time, not getting to roll my eyes at my dad at some controversial take at my 30th birthday party, dad not being there when I start my own company. But the loss is paired with gratitude. Both exist and are always present, and I'm trying to allow myself to hold both. I have so much gratitude. Gratitude for the time and conversations we had. Gratitude for being able to learn from his example, what to do and also what not to do. And I have so much thanks for the tools he's given me to be able to live my life with so much excitement, curiosity, and adventure. 99.99% of my interactions with my dad, which I think is probably similar to others, involve being pushed and pushed and pushed in some argument. Today, I wanted to share 3 stories from the 0.01%, from the softer side of my dad. The first story is from around a year ago when I got rear-ended by a car on my bike and came away rattled but physically fine. I had the contact info of the person who hit me, and dad kept asking me to contact them. I told him I didn't want to continue thinking about the incident since I was fine and I just wanted to work on moving on from it. And at the end of the day, I didn't need the money. He told me that wasn't the point. I should consider contacting the person so that they had closure in their life, since it was also a terrifying moment for them. The second story is from when I did a 3-week wilderness backpacking trip. There were 4 times where people not on the trail could visit, and my dad visited 3 times. And it was only not 4 since I told him I wanted to hike one of the times with just my best friend. On one of those visits, he came by himself for less than 24 hours. To maximize our time, we woke up early so he could do the first part of the trail with me before he had to go back. I still remember how we were the only 2 people out there and how beautiful the silvery sky was with the rays from the golden sunshine and the charcoal trees. I think it was the first day without clouds for a while. I've looked back on that time a lot in the last 5 years. I'll never forget the simple shared moment of beauty. The third story I have is when my mom last year got into an accident and seriously injured her head. And early on in her recovery, she would spend a long time talking nonsensically about things that weren't currently happening. Mom, for example, would state a bridge bid like 4 hearts. And then I would tell my dad I was really scared that my mom wouldn't ever come back. And my dad would say, it's okay. The doctor said she's going to be okay, that this is part of the healing. And then my dad would look directly into my mom's eyes and respond with 5 spades. Thank you all so much for coming today. I've come to believe that no person's grief is the most, and none of it is lesser. It's all just different shapes from the way my dad has touched all of us. And for me, each story, picture, token of love from everyone helps so much. And I'm so grateful to have everyone here and for everything everyone here has done. I'll close with a funny thought I had recently. My dad didn't believe in God and is in fact what I think some would call a militant atheist. But I've been thinking a lot about what if there is an afterlife? I don't know what it would look like, but I know my dad would be really, really good at figuring out all the logistics. He'd figure out where to get the burnt pesto bagels. You know, he'd figure out how to get a front row seat to see his daughter rock climbing or my sister doing the first crossword with her son. Dad, I love you so much, and I know how much you loved me, and I think that's enough for now.
Thank you all for being here today. There's nothing my dad loved more than a big party, so he would be so happy to see us all here together. I was exactly 0 days old when I first met Dad. And while I have no memories of that moment, in true dad fashion, I have video evidence. As many of you know, my dad loves kids dearly. He loves to toss kids in the air, bounce them around. He loves to ask them about their lives, no matter what age. He always used to say how much he loved to see the world through the eyes of me and Serena. Growing up, my early memories are of Dad giving me math puzzles and logic puzzles when we would go out to dinner as a family. I'd spend all of dinner working through them, using the crayons provided for coloring the kids' menus. When I was of an age where I asked endless questions about how the world worked, how airplanes fly, what causes rainbows, why the sky is blue, my dad would patiently answer all of my questions accurately, breaking down complex scientific phenomena into concepts that I could understand. It felt like I could ask him anything and he would know the answer. As I got to elementary school, my memories begin of our adventurous vacations. Every single school vacation, Dad wanted to go somewhere. We planned trips across the world with our family and friends. We went on every type of adventure, from cruises to treks, rafting trips to safaris. And then sophomore year of high school, I took AP Physics. I was really struggling for the first few months of the class, and Dad decided to tutor me through the entire year. We sat in his bed together, and he taught me foundationally how to understand physics and the world. Sometimes I would get frustrated with him and stomp away in anger, and sometimes he would get so frustrated with me that we would have to stop for the entire day. But the next day, we picked it up again, and he helped me ace the class. Through high school, my dad was expressly against dating. But after my first college breakup, his attitude totally changed. I remember my dad called me one day to tell me I should join all the Indian clubs on campus. The implication was that this was how I was going to meet someone worth marrying. By my junior and senior year, every time we'd go out to dinner as a family, he would drop these not so subtle lines like, "College is the best time to meet your future husband." Okay, Dad, I get it. My dad first met Sean in August of 2010. I soon came to appreciate the many similarities between them. Both were mechanical engineering graduates. Both were intensely curious about how everything in the world worked, from technology to science. Instead of me now asking my dad how stuff worked, Dad would ask Sean, "How did they take pictures of that black hole?" After I graduated college, I was adamant about finding a job without the help of my parents. I decided to join a company called LiveRamp, and my career took off. Dad was fiercely proud of every raise, every promotion. He would say, "My daughter's only 25 years old and the director of marketing." When I became president of the company, he sent the press release to all of our family and friends. Fast forward through my wedding, more family trips, more zany adventures. At the beginning of the pandemic, Sean and I decided to move in with my parents. When the internet, or lack thereof, in the cottage behind our house sent Sean and I back to SF in frustration at 9 p.m. one night, my dad figured out how to get Comcast out in a matter of 36 hours to install a new internet line. While the pandemic has been awful and challenging, the greatest silver lining is how much time I got to spend with Mom and Dad. Every morning I'd wake up and have chai with Mom, give kisses to Lily Cat, and wait for my dad to come stomping downstairs to make his tea and 1/4 toast with jam. Hi, lo, he would say excitedly when he saw me. Over the 15 months that we lived together, we filled our time doing crossword puzzles, going on hikes to Edgewood Park, eating wine and fancy cheese imported from France in the evenings. We discussed the latest news and tech, and sometimes in politics if we dared go there. We'd go on walks around the house or in the neighborhood looking for woodpeckers, owls, coyotes, and other wildlife. And he would complain that I worked too much and needed to have fewer Zoom calls. "Easy for you to say, Dad," I would retort. "You mostly just play bridge." During the pandemic, he set up an office in our dining room. The 8-person dining room table overflowed with all of his stuff, like all of his desks and tables in the house. Books, computers, gadgets, toys. He would amuse himself on Zoom calls by spinning tops that he bought from Amazon and timing how long they would spin for. One time I looked at our Amazon cart and the entire Save for Later list was filled with various types of tops. He bought a Stirling engine, which is this little steam-powered pump with a spinning wheel on top that he'd put on top of his hot teacup and watch spin. He would then accelerate it by adding an ice cube on top. He got endless hours of amusement from these simple toys. One hot summer evening, we wanted to watch The Godfather. Normally, we would have gone to our home theater, but the air conditioning didn't work and it was 100 degrees. So we decided to set up a screen and watch the movie outside in the driveway in front of the garage. Sean, Dad, and I watched the movie while eating popcorn and eating my mom's famous homemade guacamole. My dad couldn't help but spoil every single scene before it happened, talking through the entire movie, even though he hadn't seen the movie in like 40 years. For the past few years, I've been very vocal about not wanting to have kids. My dad took every opportunity he could to lobby me to have kids, including on my birthday Zoom call in 2020 with all of my friends. A few months ago, after my dad returned from a trip, the one to Canada, and a bridge tournament, I told him I was pregnant. To say he was overjoyed would be an understatement. It was his dream come true, for me to be a parent and for him to be a grandfather. The hardest thing about his untimely death has been knowing that he will never meet his grandson. The week before he left us, we took a big family vacation to Florida. My dad and I went on a 2-hour paddle together in a double kayak, him in the front and me in the back. We fought against strong winds to get to a magical mangrove tunnel. We admired all of these different seabirds. And we worked together on the kayak ride back to use that strong wind that we'd been fighting against on the way there to propel us forward. My dad tried to use his paddle to make a sail while I steered our boat to put the winds at our back. I will cherish those 2 hours deeply for the rest of my life. While it feels like my dad was taken far too soon, far too suddenly, the fact that he died one day after an amazing family vacation where he was with the people he loved most in the world, the fact that I got to live with him and see him first thing in the morning and before I went to sleep at night for over a year is the greatest blessing. This past week, there's been so much that I've learned about him and realized about myself. I know there is nothing that my dad enjoyed in life more than being my dad. I used to think he wanted me to have children because he so badly wanted to be a grandparent, but I realize now that he wanted me to be a parent because he wanted me to experience the intense joy that Serena and I brought him in his life. He couldn't imagine a life for me where I didn't get to experience that too. This past week, I learned just how broad his impact was for entrepreneurs globally and how willingly he would jump in to talk to anyone, help anyone. One of his favorite phrases, no matter how much he had on his plate, was, "I'm never busy," by which he meant he was never too busy for anyone in his life that needed help. I see more of him in myself with each passing day. I used to mock his intense love for birds, but now I'm equally as obsessed and in love with birds. I leave the fridge open, forget where I put my phone, clutter up my desk and bedside table until everything is teetering off the edge, just like Dad. I love to learn about so many subjects, all because my dad intensely stoked my curiosity throughout my life. As I think about my life going forward, I want to live with the enthusiasm he felt every day. To him, every moment was a gift, an opportunity to plan another great trip, to learn about a new company, or meet a new interesting person. He often said, "I don't regret anything in my life." Dad, wherever you are, I love you and I'm so proud to be your daughter. I like to imagine you now in the soul of a bird, flying to all the places you wanted to see in the world, watching us, laughing with us, celebrating every accomplishment, big and small. You will continue to inspire me to reach higher, think bigger, and love more fiercely.
Hi, my name is Rajiv Goel. I've known Naren for about 15 years as a dear friend, mentor, investor, and board member of my company. Earlier this week, I sent Vinitha Auntie an email about how I was feeling about Naren's passing. And I'd like to start by sharing that email with all of you. Dear Vinitha and Annika, I've been thinking a lot about Naren over the past few days. It's hard to imagine that he's gone. I had a call with him on Friday the 17th, and it's difficult to consider that that was my final conversation with him. Naren has been instrumental to my development over the last 15 years, and of course, the development of PubMatic. It's been a long journey, and Naren has been there as an optimistic cheerleader, saying things such as, "You'll figure it out," or "Things will work out in the end," all along the way. And of course, he was right. It's not an overstatement to say that myself and the company would not be where we are today if not for Naren's deep involvement over the years. As you know, he was always available to the entrepreneurs who worked with him. I remember calling him once, and he answered the phone and then told me he was on a satellite connection from a yurt in Mongolia. I was surprised that he took the call. What I remember Naren most for is his intellectual horsepower. His chip is always faster than anybody else's in the room, maybe with the exception of Vinitha Auntie. I figured out after a year or two that when he gave me some advice and I didn't understand it, it was because his thinking was about 6 months ahead of mine. On numerous occasions, I came to understand what he said only after 6 months had passed and more of the future had unfolded. He had an amazing ability to see into the future beyond what anybody else could see. And I suppose that's ultimately the measure of a successful entrepreneur. I will miss him dearly, as I know you do. Our thoughts and prayers are very much with you and Naren. Please let us know if there's anything we can do. With lots of love, Rajiv. That's the end of the email. Now, when I close my eyes, a picture of Naren comes very easily to me, and I hope that that picture will not fade. If you would like, please close your eyes for just a moment while I take you through my picture. The first thing I remember about Naren is his smile and then his laugh. He was always in a cheerful and positive mood, no matter what the circumstances. Entrepreneurs are positive and optimistic by nature, otherwise they wouldn't last very long. And he was extreme in this regard, which I found very comforting. The next thing I see when I picture him is his multitasking. I see him at our board meetings where he would have his phone, his tablet, and his computer out, and he's pulling up data across all three and identifying hypotheses or conclusions faster than anybody else in the room. And lastly, I picture him on a faraway mountaintop or in a small plane flying to a desolate place. I never traveled with him, but anytime I spoke to him, he had just come back from an amazing trip to Antarctica, Alaska, or some other remote place. We've heard about many of those trips. The fewer humans around other than his family, the more he seemed to enjoy it. That's how I picture Naren, and I hope to hold on to that picture for a very long time. Thank you. Jishnu?
Thank you, everyone. I'm honored to share our thoughts on behalf of my colleagues at Nexus Venture Partners, a firm which I am proud, I'm fortunate, and I am blessed to have been part of from early days for last 14 years. And the opportunity I had to work with Naren, to learn from him on a daily basis, share the office, and spend countless hours together. I'm very grateful. It is hard to believe that our Naren Gupta is no more, but the gentle genius lives on in our hearts, the genius who profoundly touched, inspired, and changed countless lives around the world for the better. After ace academic achievements at IIT, Caltech, and Stanford, Naren's tryst with entrepreneurship began in the early days of technology entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley. He was one of the first founding CEOs of Indian origin to take his company public in the US. Then, as an angel investor, he leveraged his company building skills and acumen to help promising technology founders realize their dreams. After writing many checks to technology entrepreneurs, many first checks rather, Naren co-founded Nexus Venture Partners with a vision to bring company building expertise and risk capital to the Indian entrepreneurial ecosystem and help build the firm into a leading investment institution in India and globally, where he got to touch the lives of thousands. Naren was the quintessential champion of entrepreneurs. He was naturally inclined to identify and back first time entrepreneurs who are not afraid to traverse the uncharted territory like he did, who are not afraid to fail like what his attitude was. He would push them to dream big, think beyond the obvious, and remind them that company building journey is a marathon, not a sprint, and would stand behind the companies through thick and thin. He would counsel them on how a company could be killed by overfunding and that it is important to focus on fundamentals. Every interaction had to add value, even if he didn't back them. He was always punctual, courteous, and mindful of their time. He genuinely cared for every entrepreneur he met and truly wanted them to succeed. He was always available and generous with his time. He was never busy, as previous speakers have also said. He was always available. Despite his achievements, there was never a feeling of entitlement with Naren. He always exemplified humility after success. He would always welcome differing opinions and treat everyone with utmost respect, be it an engineer or the CEO of a company or a budding investment professional. Naren had an insatiable intellectual curiosity and passion for life. An avid reader, a listener of audiobooks, he was willing to engage in an intellectual conversation on almost any topic under the sun, from quantum physics to Indian politics, from winemaking to child rearing. He wanted to experience as much of the world as he could with a travel bucket list ranging from Jerusalem to Jodhpur, from Patagonia to Paris, or from Alaska to Antarctica. Naren's zest of life was palpable in everything he would do. He enjoyed his morning hikes or whipping up scrambled eggs for breakfast as much as he did his playing competitive bridge. His childlike laughter, bright wit, and fun loving nature endeared himself to everyone he engaged with, including children. My 7-year-old, when he heard the news, his only reaction was, Naren uncle was so nice and so funny. We have lost a visionary, a mentor, and dear, dear friend. The gentle genius lives on in our hearts. We have an unmatched legacy for us to carry forward. Thank you.
maybe it's better that I hold it. It's been very moving for me to listen to these recollections of different people and so on. I have known Naren since 1970, when he came from Caltech to Stanford. And it's been, for me, a great education and a great experience to see his growth over the years from being a student, and I will go into some of those details in a moment. How would one characterize him? Let me start with a story. Several years ago now, on an occasion when Vinitha wasn't there, but Anika was there, Naren got an award from the Asia Society. And there were a number of people there, so time was an essence. So the program monitor was very pushy, saying, please don't talk more than 2 minutes. And after a while I said, okay, I may not even need 2 minutes, because all I would need is 2 words to characterize our honoree today. And the 2 words were consistently brilliant. And that's his characteristic, as I watched over the years. Many people are bright and so on, but they don't carry that spirit all the way through. With Naren, they sat lightly on him, but he was consistently brilliant. Now, let me also go back and tell you some stories of the early days. He was a student in aero, and I was in electrical engineering, but he took my classes, and we got to know each other, and we focused then on systems and control. And he joined a company with that same name, Systems and Control. He did well there and was promoted and so on. But after a while, after 6 or 7 years, he began to share with me, well, over the years, some of his frustrations with the politics of the company. And so we were talking, I remember we had conversations with Vinitha also at our home. And I suggest to him, maybe we should, at that time it was unusual, but there were 1 or 2 examples. Maybe we should launch out on our own and form a company, because what they were doing was, in those days, very different from what's happening now. You got money from the government for writing reports, which no one read, I believe, but however, so the funding agencies would support that. So Naren told the company that he's planning to leave. They weren't very happy, and so they made him various promises that they would do this and do that and so on, and give him more responsibilities. It was such a stressful discussion that Vinitha and he decided to take off for a week and go to Hawaii, to unwind after all these stresses. When they came back, they found that, in the meantime, the politics had begun to take over, and some of the things they had promised him were no longer on the table. He quit on the spot. And, he told me, well, now we can do what we wanted. And so we started this company, and I suggested the name, Integrated Systems. Okay. And there were 4 founders at the time, Naren and Vinitha and myself and my late wife, Sarah. Sarah soon backed out. There were just the 3 of us. And let me tell you what our starting capital was. $10,000, which we shared among the 4 of us. Hard to believe. But Naren built it from there, over the pretty quickly, and with various initiatives. We started out doing some contracts for the government and so on. But then he realized the promise of embedded systems, and he made a deal with the founder of a small company on real-time operating systems. And that gave us some products in addition to reports of governments, and Integrated began to take off. Now, again, to just share a story. So VCs began to talk to us and so on and say, you know, we can help you with the growing people, advice, management, and so on. And we were persuaded that this would happen. Maybe Vinita doesn't remember all of this, but a pretty good venture firm, I won't mention the name, made an offer to us. We already probably had $1 million in the bank at that time. And they offered us, I forget now the number, but not much more than $1 million. 1 million, right. And we thought we'd take it, you know, we didn't know because they promised, oh, we'll hire people, we'll be marketing people and so on. I took off a sabbatical for Israel. And in those days, you know, the phone calls were extremely expensive and so on. I didn't know what was happening. When I came back after 3 months, I asked Naren, so what happened with the VCs and so on? Oh, they walked away. That was our good luck. Okay. So I forget exactly how we moved on then, but we did. Actually, once I remember Vinita telling us we were short on payroll and I had to make a loan to the company to meet the payroll. However, we grew, and Summit Ventures, a very nice VC firm, made us an offer in 1990 to invest at that time, I think $1 million. And 10 years later, they took us public. This was 1980. So 1990, we went public, I think. Am I right, Vanita? Right, yeah. So, and then I watched the growth of, well, before that, I must say, you know, Naren could have been an academic, actually, because he wrote papers and so on. And in fact, I think it's rare among entrepreneurs, he's also a fellow of the IEEE, the major professional society for electrical engineers. I didn't know that his initial degree was in mechanical engineering, but you know, he knew a lot about everything, as was said, because he was a really quick study. So you know, it was interesting to watch, as you're not surprising, how quickly, as CEO, he learned the many different aspects of running a company and so on. We would have accountants come, and I'd be amazed watching Naren. He seemed to know more than what the accountants were doing about how to proceed with the company and so on. So, you know, his talents in this regard were amazing. I could, you know, go on, but let me go to a couple of stories. There was he was getting an award from the Asia Society. And now maybe I'm repeating myself. Yeah. Okay, because okay. You know, I made some notes, but I decided somehow I didn't bring them with me. But what should I say now? Yeah. That, you know, Naren and Vinita have been very gracious to me and my family in the time. And I remember that on the occasion of Sarah's 50th birthday, I wanted to surprise her. And we decided to fund a chair at UC Berkeley. And Naren and Vinita stepped up because we couldn't. And they helped the four of us, or the three of us actually, was the Sarah Kaila Chair of India Studies at UC Berkeley. Then many years later, when we wanted to, some of my students and I wanted to start a company, and actually the co-founder is here, Buno Pati. I don't know where he is now. But the first person we went to, I told them we need advice, and we went to Naren to be our board member. And he, of course, was helped us go public and so on. And Vinita and Naren have been, you know, very gracious to me also. And I wanted to conclude by two remarks. One is, and my wife Anu reminded me, that he had a great passion for his friends, and he was very analytical and so on, but he had a lot of love for the people that were close to him, whether they were family or his, and people have mentioned this here today, or who worked with him or were his fellow students. And he had very close friends and he really loved them. Okay. And so what I like to, my final thought would be to mention a short poem of what I think someone with his zest has and happening now. And this is a verse from a poet, a long poem by Shelley. And it says, in the golden lightning of the sunken sun, or where clouds are brightening, he does float and run like an unbodied joy whose race has just begun. And that's how I like to think of Naren now. Wherever he is enjoying himself, he's floating, he's meeting people, he's having fun, and with his zest for life. Thank you all very much. Vinita? Thank you.
Somebody can help.
Yeah, I will.
Just come on this side.
Okay, I'll get the railing.
How about this?
Okay, thank you, Vinita.
Yeah. Just gently. Is it, can you hear me? Okay. Well, I'm going to start just where Tom finished. I call him Professor Kailath. And Naren took a long time before she started calling him Tom. He was his professor, then mentor, then partner, and then when he became friend, that is when he could call him Tom. So we are deeply, deeply touched by him. Naren evolved because of him, and no more words to say. My remarks are going to be very personal, but I did want people to know that Naren was, as we heard, he was a mechanical engineer, but in the end declared himself a software expert. He started his business as a consultant, and then he became a product company, and I heard him preaching to many entrepreneurs how consulting companies can never become a product company. And I think people who understand what I'm saying, that is a big characteristic. It is the DNA of the company. That is what he used to talk about. He could have been a researcher because he had a PhD degree, but he was determined not to be. With that, I'm Vinita, his wife. I stand here with greater ease today because I know that Naren lived the way he wanted to. He worked hard till the end and played hard. A life led with enthusiasm and zest. He left the world at the top of his game. We were married for 47 years. And I'm going to make this remark for the people who are younger and still undergoing life with their partners. So we were married for 47 years. Our marriage was a fierce battleground of two tigers. We pushed each other to higher and higher standards. We danced together. We traveled together on numerous trips, countless trips. We started playing bridge together almost soon after we got married. Bridge brought the best and the worst between our marriage. Naren was, and I am, passionate about the game, and I had a hard time writing was because it's so recent. Now I'm going to share some secrets, if I may. Unlike what you heard, Naren measured himself by the money he could generate. Just like he measured his bridge performance by Butler scores. Being IIT gold medalists, going to Caltech, Stanford, early entrepreneurial successes, creating the largest cross-border venture fund could not be mere accidents. He was a scorekeeper by habit. During lockdown, Bridge went online. He had a jar on his table in which he used to put $100 bill every time he made a major mistake. I found out later on that money was going to come to me. But stopping at any destination was never in his cards. He never stopped. He kept moving on. He struggled making small decisions like optimizing airplane tickets or selecting a picture for framing from 30 white doll-shaped pictures that he had taken with his infamous cameras. He spent hours tinkering with those pictures. I would go and have breakfast and come back and he would still be selecting one of the 30 pictures. And he said, should I select this or that? He also had problem, for example, buying earbuds on Amazon was a non-trivial task for him. He would spend hours, days, and weeks before he could make such a decision. But he was quick in making big decisions at major bifurcations in his life, which happened. When he had a heart attack, he resigned from ISI. Then he stepped in after many years to become CEO of Wind River when the company was struggling. And he basically put it back on track. And Wind River System, if you remember, was the company that bought his original company, Integrated System. He also tended to forget his big mistakes. I can say he was an optimist or perhaps illusionary. But it helped him move forward. It was perhaps his way of overcoming obstacles and difficulties. He was intolerant of small mistakes. You just heard from Ashwini. When I made a wrong turn while driving, he would relentlessly criticize me, totally unforgiving. But when during lockdown, when bridge cheating scandal broke out, I heard from his mentor and friend Zia, who's the Tiger Woods of bridge world, which he said, Naren told him, everyone deserves a second chance, but not his wife. He could be generous by writing big checks on a moment's decision for charities or for Nexus entrepreneurs with an idea in their pocket, but indefinitely pester me for spending 99 cents when I signed up for iCloud. Very recently, when I decided I wanted to increase it to $2.99, I didn't have the heart to tell him that I did that. Naren, in my humble opinion, had a crash and burn personality, yet he was careful. He was unafraid of bragging. We heard about his bragging. He would brag about his bridge, he would brag about his kids, he would brag about his companies, but he was humble. He could be harsh, and yet he could be loving. And I think my daughters know what I'm talking about. He most likely would not have agreed with any of what I just told you. I could hear him say on our pillow talk tonight, I do not understand your speech today. What he would really mean is, you could do better. As his wife, I can say, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, fully describes Naren for me. He could step in and step back as the situation demanded. His imperfections made him perfect in my eyes. We pushed each other to be better version of ourselves. I only wish we did it more gracefully. With that, I'm going to very quickly conclude, and you're going to watch a short video, 8 minutes video, which we played at his 70th birthday. He was 73 when he passed away. And it describes primarily Vinita's view of Naren's passion for investing. On morning after our honeymoon, he was sitting and reading Wall Street Journal. So rest, as we say in Hindi, पर्दे पे देखिए.
I am Naren, the Bill Gates of dishwashers. My desires were foolishly many, so were my dreams. My family, mom, dad, sister, and 2 brothers. Together we played Teen Patti and Kotpiece, card games. My parents made me an engineer. Yet unknown to me, I harbored a passion, but needed money to have a fair shot at it. My academic successes started stacking up quickly. Topped the IIT entrance exam in 1965. Oh shucks, Wiki just missed me. Darn it. Dad proudly received my gold medal for topping IIT from the President of India. Caltech, where I went for my master's, honored me with a Distinguished Alumni Award.
Needless to say, I feel very grateful and privileged to receive this award, particularly from Caltech.
I received my PhD from Stanford. Bit of a sad graduation with no family members present. Tears. Oh well. IIT finally remembered me and honored me as a distinguished alumnus. A reminder of my humble beginning. Reading and doing puzzles became my favorite pastime. No girlfriends yet. Then, I found a girlfriend, and we got married in a hurry. We both worked, but we never seemed to have money in the bank. Money got plunked into homes, on travels, taking 3 vacations a year, come hell or high water, honeymoon in Hawaii, with every penny of savings. France, Germany, England, Machu Picchu, Mexico, Russia, and yearly trips to India. all of our leftover money got spent in 2 startups. So, I must become professionally successful, I figured. Abandoning my scientific path through my PhD, I got down to business. Could not stand working for others. Started Integrated Systems, and taking it public was exciting. Turned Integrated Systems into a software company with operating systems for products like cars. And yes, dishwasher. Caltech invited me to join their prestigious board. Red Hat, a $3 billion company, invited me on their board. Red Hat is in North Carolina. But that was way before the Hennessy's became an integral part of our family. I can never forget the arrival of Annika and Serena.
Of course, she sleeps most of the time because she's so small and so cute. Most of the time she just sleeps. But when she's hungry, she cries, and she cries a lot.
मुन्ने बच्चे तेरी मुट्ठी में क्या है नन्हे मुन्ने बच्चे तेरी मुट्ठी में क्या है
मुट्ठी में है तकदीर हमारी मुट्ठी में है तकदीर हमारी हमने किस्मत को बस में किया है हमने किस्मत को बस में किया है
भोली भाली मत वाली आँखों में क्या है भोली भाली मत वाली आँखों में क्या है
आँखों में झूमे उम्मीदों की दिवाली आँखों में झूमे उम्मीदों की दिवाली आने वाली दुनिया का सपना सजा है आने वाली दुनिया का सपना सजा है Mommy, she's cold.
But you don't know how you're going to wrap it like this.
No, she doesn't need to be wrapped. She needs to be fed right now.
No, she wants to be wrapped.
Yes.
Extracting kisses from the kids was a joy. A natural dad I was. Their early hiking experiences started in my back carrier.
Okay. How do you like the trip so far?
Wonderful. Kayaking was great, snorkeling was good, the hike was tough and hot, but very good.
And we saw the trumpet fish. I saw two of them.
Oh, really?
Male and female.
What about you, Serena? Did you like the hike?
It was too hard for her, too hot.
They became avid travelers, crossed 60 countries before turning 20. I had only seen India by that age. My goal of crossing 100 countries by 70 has been met. Hurrah! Photography became a serious hobby. but only 10 pictures got 5 stars. I promised no more than 2,000 pictures per trip. My friend Ashok made sure I had the latest Canon cameras and lenses. Bridge started in the IIT dorm. Reinforcement came when Vinita and I won many firsts in a national and 2 other rookie tournaments, competing in the lowest categories. Emboldened by our skills, Vinita initiated a call to invite Eddie Cantor, and our lives changed forever. I have read all of his books multiple times. Not an easy game, even for a genius like me. In the middle of all this excitement, I broke my heart. Major repairs were a must. Ash and Vinita got my docs to get me patched up. Anita chipped in for many months along with the kids. Ankush, Aman, Anika, and Serena grew up together. They were partners in crime on most of our trips. Stories are too numerous. Back to profession and passion. Along the way, met famous people. The Prime Minister of India, Bill Clinton, Schwarzenegger, Nancy Pelosi, the most beautiful woman of India in Bollywood, Aishwarya Rai, and the famous Eddie Cantor, the Bill Gates of Bridge. By now, both companies were public, and we got the extra money that I was waiting for. Finally, my reading value line for 2 decades came in handy. In the new internet age, I created a large Yahoo portfolio, looking up stocks every minute. This was my hidden passion, investing. Putting money in the bank is a losing proposition. Investing in the stock market is the right answer. One needs money to make money, I realized. Then came Nexus, right before the 2008 market crash. But as a true investor at heart, this was a buying opportunity.
Accepting mistakes takes courage. And the letter that you have seen, and of course we have seen as well, shows commitment, it shows passion, and it shows courage. And I wish all our founders had that kind of a courage to accept their mistakes and correct those mistakes and move in the right direction.
Nexus is my 3rd baby and a dream come true.
It's been a pretty interesting journey. I would say lots of ups and downs along the way, but overall it has been a journey of bigger and better things. Smarter and more engaged entrepreneurs, and I think the future is even brighter.
Now, my investment day starts with a hearty breakfast.
चाकू की नोक पर बवाल हो गया और राइटर फैल गया
I am Naren. The Bill Gates of dishwasher.
Kırda, 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 ta, ta, ta.